stuck outside the United States and he can't come back. Hi, I'm Jim Hacking, immigration lawyer practicing law throughout the United States out of our offices in St. Louis, San Diego, and Washington, D.C. In today's video, we're talking about people who have a non-immigrant visa in the United States, typically an H-1B visa or an F-1 visa or F-2 or H-4, things of that nature, people who are in the United States, not on a green card, not U.S. citizens, who are in non-immigrant status and who've entered the United States on a visa that has since expired. So, of course, most people know that a visa is your ticket into the United States. The visa says that the State Department has approved you for entry into the United States, and that's something that CBP can rely on when allowing you to come into the United States. And the visa does not dictate how long you get to stay. So typically people on an H-1B can stay for 3 years, and the visa that they receive, though, might only be for 6 months or 12 months, and that's how long they have to actually enter the United States. But then they have status in the United States beyond that. With an F-1 visa, as long as they have an updated I-20 and are continuing to go to school and maintaining the terms of their status, they might be in the United States long, long years after their initial F-1 visa expired. And so that's fine to be in the United States on an expired visa, but once you leave the United States, then you're going to have to go to a consulate abroad and apply for a new visa. Now, you'll submit evidence of your current status and show that you've maintained your status, and then they will issue you a new visa, which is what allows you to get back on the plane to come to the United States. Now, for those of you who don't know, we have the Immigration Answer Show. That's a show where I answer questions related to the immigration process 3 or 4 times a week for free on YouTube and in our Facebook group, which is called Immigrant Home. And I had a young man on last week who told me a story, and it's something that I worry about all the time. Now, we get tons of calls on the show with people asking me, Jim, is it safe for me to leave the United States? And I always tell them, well, do you know about Dungeons and Dragons? When I was a kid, I played Dungeons and Dragons. And, most dice that people see, most dice have 6 sides. But in Dungeons and Dragons, they have 12-sided die. They have a 20-sided die. And I really, really want to buy a 20-sided die, because when people call me and they say, Jim, what are the chances of me having a problem overseas? Usually I say something like 5%. Well, 5% is one number on a 20-sided die. So I really want to have the actual die here when people call the show, and I just roll the die and we see if they hit. Now, if they hit, like this poor guy did, they're stuck outside the United States. And so in that time period where you leave the United States and then go to see the consulate, bad things can happen. The consulate can close. There can be a coronavirus. The embassy might find something in your file that they didn't find before. And that's what happened to this poor guy that called the show. Let me tell you what happened. So he was in the United States on an F-1. At the end of his F-1 studies, he went on to this program called Optional Practical Training, OPT. And when he did that, he worked for an employer who ended up getting in trouble for immigration violations years later and for H-1B violations. They were never his H-1B employer, but he did work there for 8 months on OPT. And the problem was that employer didn't really have a job for him. So he technically wasn't working. And when he went overseas to renew his visa, he told the officers about that. By that point, the government, U.S. government, had already figured out that this company was maybe a bad player, and he told the officer what had happened. Now, he had gotten his H-1B renewed once before, so he thought he was completely safe going overseas. And I understand it, but that's where the 5% comes in. That's where the one side of the 20-sided die comes in. You can't know what's going to happen. No lawyer, no employer, no U.S. government official can promise you that everything's going to be okay for you to go overseas. And that's why I always ask, how can you afford to be outside the United States for 6 months? What would happen if you got stuck like this poor guy did and they won't issue you the visa? He received a document saying that his case was in administrative processing, which basically means the State Department is saying, we don't know what we want to do with your case. And he has been in that status for months and months, and he can't get any relief. Now, he might hire us to sue the State Department to try to get a final decision, but I don't know what's going to happen. They might say that 8 months was a misrepresentation on his part by not working and knowing that he wasn't working and knowing the terms of his OPT. I don't know what's going to happen. But I do know most likely that nothing's going to happen unless he sues them. But I also know, more importantly, and for the purposes of this video, that you can really get stuck outside the United States with no recourse. I can't make the State Department give him a visa. I can't beg them to. They do whatever they want. And a federal judge in America can't make them give him a visa. They can make them issue a decision, but there's no guarantee, which is why it's always safer to stay in the United States. And that's why I'm making this video. That's what I want you to understand. So if you find yourself stuck overseas or a loved one stuck overseas, we can sue them for you. That's something we could help with. Or if you're looking for help with the employment visa process or the family-based visa process or green card process, feel free to give us a call, 314-961-8200, or email us info@hackingimmigrationlaw.com. You know, I mentioned our Facebook group, which is called Immigrant Home. We have thousands of members in there, and they're all talking about the immigration process. If you want to reach a community and people that are doing the same things you are, feel free to join us there. It's free. And then also we have our YouTube channel where I post 2 or 3 videos a week talking about the immigration process. And then we have our Immigration Answer Show, which I already talked about. Thanks so much, and we'll see you next time.